So the first thing I wanted to cover was Uber. How many of y'all saw the link or have been following the news about the autonomous driving first casualty?
Yeah, Sunday, right?
Yeah? Okay, do y'all have any thoughts? What do you think about it? It's really interesting, right? It's a legal debate going on, and it's huge for the progression of this technology. Do you have any specific things? What do you think about it? Are you kind of worried about this one fatality? Do you think it's going to slow down progress?
I mean, they're always just going to go back to this and refer to this and be like, this isn't safe because of this one incident.
Exactly,
like,
right.
One thing is going to like...
Yeah, we tend to forget all the deaths that it prevented or something.
Right.
We tend to forget about that. But this particular case, in this particular case, based on what I read, the person who was crossing the street saw the vehicle coming, and she thought it would stop, and the car was not programmed well enough to start slowing as soon as it sees somebody trying to cross the street. It just and then something like that.
Yeah, so I haven't read any of the reports. You could be totally right, but it's really interesting, and you brought up a really good point, and a lot of Republicans and Democrats have been kind of going back and forth about this issue, and one of them is how many cars operated by humans kill pedestrians a year. So if this technology is more efficient, then I think that's a strong point. But Uber's only testing in 4 cities. And then you've got other places like I think Toyota halted their self-automating cars also in their test. So it'll be really interesting, and it's going to be really easy to tell because these cars have cameras all around them, and it's constantly capturing what's going on. So in the next couple of days, we should get a detailed investigation release. But I thought it was really interesting, especially since Uber is planning on doing its IPO pretty soon, in the next year or two. So any other worries or any other comments that y'all want to mention about this? Would you get in a self-driving car right now?
The Tesla. Well,
the Tesla.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, where you're still sitting at the wheel, but it's kind of doing all the work, and if something goes wrong, you can just hit the brake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not fully automated, but like semi-automated, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. Another really interesting thing that I wanted to mention is the legalities. So whenever I was first learning about self-driving cars, I knew the biggest obstacle is going to be legalities, right? So it's kind of interesting. I read that the government is taking on the role of implementing legal procedures. It's not going to be the programmer or the car company's fault if something does go wrong. It's going to be the government for not implementing tight enough regulations. So it's going to be really interesting how the government responds and what new implementations that they kind of do. Because the new bill was passed to kind of speed up this technology, kind of knocking away some of the safety features that should be on the car. So, any other comments before I start the presentation?
So if they move this responsibility thing over to the government side, let's say something happens, even if somebody sues the government for that,
right?
What are they going to get? They're going to get some money. What's going to happen next? Nothing is. And I mean, if it's a company, then the company may have a bad reputation and they may go out of business. But a country or a government cannot go out of business or anything.
Right.
And the most they can lose is some money, some taxpayers' money.
Right.
I think companies will be in a safer place.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I said, I thought it would be the programmers that were held liable or the companies using
I think companies, if something happens, if company is liable, then they'll go out of business and they'll be more aware of it and more cautious.
Right. So that's not too clear yet, and I still think we're a couple years away from self-driving cars being completely legal and figuring out the legalities surrounding them. But yeah, you bring up a really good point. So.